On this slide, feel free to click my link for more information. Joshua.
Hey, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Chis. I'm a second-year student at DePaul University studying physics. I'm also on the teaching team for the course we'll be discussing in today's presentation. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, great. So let's get started. I've also put in the Zoom chat here, and I'll repeat it for any other attendees coming in, a link to our presentation that, again, you can download easily and follow along if you wish, or save for the future. So let's get started here. Some opening comments here. First, this is a picture of our class, which met via Zoom last year. And so this is us meeting with an executive vice president of a major nonprofit organization to learn about their business. We have 4 opening comments that we want to help contextualize our talk here today. The first is that an urban economy evolves and adapts according to the people that occupy it. That includes consumers, includes leaders, and especially includes, of course, university attendees, like our students, staff, and faculty. So everybody is really involved in the urban political economy as it evolves and adapts. I think especially in the last 18 months, we've certainly seen the ups and downs of how that transpires. Our second comment here is that equity in academic and career choices begins with early access. This is a primary consideration for my philosophy in developing this seminar several years ago. That is that equity begins with early access. We'll go into detail and over the presentation of what that means. Third is that diversity operates and materializes in multiple ways. And so what I mean by this is that we're talking about not only the diversity of our students, but also the diversity of the topics that are offered to our students for them to get acclimated to university environment. We're also thinking in this seminar of the diversity of the way that we make course material accessible to students, the diversity of our speakers, and the diversity of the industries and the various companies and organizations that we are visiting with. Finally here, that first-year learning is an intersection of student, educator, subject, and primarily for this purpose here in this conference today, environment. So we're considering Chicago as the environment, and that's going to be at the forefront of our thinking, has been at the forefront of my thinking for this seminar, and hopefully for the students who have all participated in it, and I think for all of us. So there's some 3 opening questions here that we wanted you all to consider and keep in mind. Joshua?
So first off, we have, what expectations do students confront when talking to global executives and leaders? Secondly, how are social equity and inclusion instilled in students after learning about big business? And lastly, how is research experience from learning that incorporates the Chicago environment?
So you have a picture here from 2 years ago of our class meeting with Vice President of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago that was located downtown. Perhaps some of you have been to it. It's free and open to the public, and they have a really terrific money museum. So students got really the head start here of learning about how economics and economic theory actually operates. So our agenda here for today over the next 20 minutes is going to be, number 1, to cover a very brief quantitative research study that I did some time back on diversity and achievement at a business school. And number 2 is going to be an overview of the seminar. It's our first-year seminar here at DePaul, and that is one of many topics offered. This one is called the Chicago Economy at Work. And number 3 then is student perspectives on Chicago economics and research. You're going to hear directly from student voices. Featured in this picture here is us meeting in one of our high-tech classrooms here, virtually with one of our speakers here at DePaul University. This was one of the chief officers from Deloitte. Okay, so let me start here, and I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I do want to sort of ground this in the research, and that is that I conducted a quantitative statistical analysis to look at the relationship between business degrees earned and academic status and ethnic category at a large private university's business school in Chicago. And so this is connected with our purposes of this first-year seminar, and I think to help think about how we can extend the reach of our educational efforts toward diverse populations, as well as to ensure their ongoing success in school. This is only, again, a very small snapshot of the study, but essentially the research questions here are whether or not there's a relationship between completing your degree and your ethnicity and your academic status and your ethnicity. My hypothesis being that there is, in fact, a difference in degree completion. The data set that I generated had 28,000 observations, so that's 28,000 students over a 20-year period. So what we're looking at here, for those, again, I'm moving quickly here, but you can download, and for those who are more research or quantitatively inclined, feel free to look at it more closely. But what we're seeing here is the results of what's called a Chisquare test, which is based on the likelihood or probability of being in any given cell here, what is expected versus what actually happened. And so we can determine here if academic status here, which is completed, students who completed their degree, students who discontinued from their degree or were dismissed from this school, from the business school. And so these are the categories, and they're correlated to these ethnic categories on the left here. So what we're looking at here, what I've circled for you here, is standardized residual. So anytime you see a absolute value of standardized residual greater than a 1.5, then it is significantly different than what is expected within that ethnic category. So in order here of completing degree successfully, we have Asian, white, Hispanic, and then Black. So notice Black's absolute value is 10.7. So this, of course, is a very great concern. As a matter of fact, in this business school over a 20-year period, the business school loses precisely 50% of its Black students from the first year to the fourth year. So compared to who's admitted, compared to who's graduated. And so, of course, that's something that we would want to pay attention to and look at. You can feel free to study this data again, look at more closely on your own. And then the second set I wanted to share with you was to look at students who are discontinuing, those who are stopping out from their program in a business school. So of these, there were just over 11,000 observations or students over that 20-year period, and they were categorized into leaving for academic reasons, which is a general category. Students withdrew on their own accord. The third category here is that they did not enroll after starting to enroll. They started their program, but then did not enroll past typically their first semester or first year, or they were admitted but did not pick up on classes at all. So again, we look at the standardized residuals for greater than an absolute value of 1.5, and we're seeing here that negative means lower than expected, positive means higher than expected. So in this example, Black and Asian students, Black here and Asian students here, are more likely to withdraw for academic reasons. Black students are highly likely to stop enrollment after starting. So this, again, giving us the statistical foundation for what I think a lot of us politically and socially already know, and that is that we need to pay close attention to the equitable distribution and level of access for students of all different backgrounds. And so the summary of the results essentially demonstrated yes to the questions that there is a relationship between ethnicity and these various categories. I did look at an admit type, GPA, as well as degree completion and academic status. And so this leads us then to implications for practice and teaching. So moving through this, I feel welcome you to read this more closely on your own, but essentially want to help students to make sure that they are experiencing foundational class topics that will help them connect to succeed in the business curriculum. We want to provide them with early and ongoing experience with business culture, introduce them to diverse professional circles, and help them to create mutually supportive networks. And so to this end, our slogan for this presentation and for our thinking around the seminar is that equity begins with access. Equity begins with access. All right, let's move on and talk about the actual seminar, part 2 here. So the seminar is called the Chicago Economy at Work. This is a topical seminar. Students choose from many different seminars that are offered to DePaul's first-year students. Here's a picture of us on the Chicago Architectural Boat Tour, in which they learned a lot about the economy and the buildings and different businesses that are housed here in Chicago's Loop. So the course aims for my seminar are essentially 3 points. The first is to explore the urban political economy. What are the national and global trends that drive the Chicago economy? How does it grow or shrink? Why do companies make Chicago their home? Second is for students to experience learning through visits and conversation with companies and leaders to share their story and their mission statements. And third is then to have scholarly readings and discussions in seminar style on economics, society, and the ethics of work. Here our class is visiting with United at United headquarters with the Chief of Staff of the Chief Technology Officer at United. So the coursework consists of what we usually see in courses, right? Reading responses, contributions, and reflections. But what we want to hone in on here is actually the company research profile, since this conference is geared toward how students conducted research. Here we're in a conference room meeting with CBRE, which is Coldwell Bank Real Estate, and their executive leadership team. That was a couple of years ago. This slide here shows the vast diversity of industries and companies that are represented that our students have visited with through this seminar. And I want us thinking here about the different categories of where these companies are located, the different industries. So we have, this is my thinking when I approach this. I want to make sure that I'm diversifying students' experience. So under hospitality, for example, we have Hyatt Regency, which is headquartered in Chicago, Let Us Entertain You, which grew out of Chicago, McDonald's, Chicago Cubs. Under financial services, BMO Harris and CNA Insurance. Marketing, we have Ketchum, Huron Consulting for the consulting industry, and so on and so forth. United Airlines and Boeing, those have been big ones. And especially then for nonprofit as well. We can't forget about that. Nonprofit, we actually visit with DePaul University, a couple of museums like the MSI and the Art Institute, and for government, the Chicago Cook County Board of Commissioners. So one assignment that the students do every single week is to complete a company profile. Here's one example from a student who gave me permission to share. And so you'll see on their assignment, they identify the company name and what the company's industry is and the types of services that they provide. So you can read down here mission, and they identify some historical facts. And this all helps them to drive the conversation once they have that visit to the company or the visitor comes to us in the classroom. In regular years, outside of COVID, we always make all visits to our companies. This year, we've had speakers come into campus, or we've met them online through our Zoom-enabled classrooms. So students then also prepare for questions that they can ask. So this is thought about ahead of time. I send it out to the speakers, and then that really helps to drive the conversation. So what I hone in on for the students and for the speakers is the speaker is not giving a presentation longer than 5 minutes. It is this, they are giving an overview, and then the students are driving the conversation seminar style with the speaker based on the research that they have done about them and about the company or the organization. Here's an overview of the diversity of readings here. So students, I really want them engaging with diverse perspectives on economics and philosophy. So feel free to take a look at these on your own as well. Here we are meeting with the CEO of Tribune Publishing Company, that publishes the Chicago Tribune, among others, that was located downtown, well, actually now at their former office space. And then we also give students access to webinars and events from which they can choose. So this is important for us as well, because I want convenience of access, especially for students who might have other commitments outside of school, but to still keep them engaged with the class. So they have a lot of choices here. Here are examples of our class schedule. I'm going to move through this because I want to get to our part 3, but feel free to take a look at this on your own. Here we're meeting with Hyatt Regency downtown. And you'll see the structure of each of our weeks here. So we have readings, class visits, and then the common hour where students meet with Joshua here. He's their mentor and part of our teaching team. So let's now hear directly from our students' perspectives. This is really the highlight, I think, of our presentation here, and that is hearing from the voices of students themselves. Once again, I'm going to put into the Zoom chat here the link to the presentation for those who may have joined after 9 o'clock, so feel free to download that for your own time. Let me turn it over to you, Joshua.
Thank you. So with the aims and goals of the course set, we wanted to turn to the students and hear from them directly. The goal, of course, being to gather information regarding the effects of the course in terms of what they've known to be research or how to conduct research, and also how they, what effects the speakers themselves and them talking directly to the students have on them. So with all the students' permission, an unmoderated focus group was done and recorded over Zoom, with the goal of the group being to start an open dialogue about the course and, of course, their takeaways. Some of the students were current students in the class, and others have been past students. And the whole discussion was grounded in 3 questions that were brought up before. So the first being, how did the visits and speakers help you to learn about different industries? The second being, how did the course help you to gain new knowledge about Chicago as a city? And lastly, we have, what does the word research mean to you? Does it help or prepare you for your college degree? So with that, we'll go ahead and these videos are available to you all as well. If you go ahead and download the slide deck and use the hyperlink on the view video. We'll start with today's introduction. If you can, Brian, go over to the videos and start with students defining research.
One thing that I think I honestly learned within like the past like few weeks is that when it comes to research, I always associated research with hitting the books, going on websites, and reading any kind of article that I could find. But it's also really important to know that research is all can also be through people, and I feel like people are one of the most valuable sources. And just by like having visitors come in and us learning about their industry and their company and their day-to-day tasks, that's already us doing research because we're learning something new. We're learning something through a source, which is them, a person that does that job for a living. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people don't really associate people with like research as well. And yeah.
So I feel that the ending to this clip is what's really important to pay attention to. The student states people don't often associate people with research. This is exactly what the course has solved, in effect, by providing a form of experiential learning early on to students so that they may find that experience can also be used as a primary source of research and learning. So we'll continue with this idea of redefining research and it taking on a new definition in the next clip, using class visits as research.
One thing that I think I honestly learned within like the past like few weeks is that when it comes to research, I always associated research with.
I'm sorry, Joshua, which one was it again?
Using class visits as research.
Yes, okay, thank you.
I feel like when we think of research, we think, oh, computer, textbooks, notebooks, that type of stuff. But really, I mean, when all the visitors came, I learned more talking to them than just looking up their stuff, like asking them questions about their company and just finding more out like about them.
Yeah, I'd say my view on what we would call research has changed significantly since I first got here and started this Discover Chicago class. I used to think that research was just sitting down and reading a book about the subject that you're thinking about or going online and watching a video about it. But I feel like I feel like it should be considered more of like a thing that you can do in person now because like you go there, you get that first person like response and you see it through their eyes rather than like just reading what it was about. So you get more of a experience from it, in my opinion. So I prefer that to what I previously thought of research.
So again, we see directly that these students have a similar redefinition of research. Primarily in this case, however, there's a specific weight assigned to the idea of where the research is actually conducted, of course, through the visits, and how the location and method has effect on what information can be obtained. In this case, it's what really defines the roles that the speakers themselves take on in their day-to-day jobs. This is especially important now that we're making this transition back into face-to-face interaction, bringing in ever increasing degrees of freedom regarding how we go about obtaining information. So lastly, I want to focus on two segments back to back, and that'll be using class visits to conduct research and speaker history offers perspective.
I feel like when we think of research, we think, oh, computer, textbooks, notebooks, that type of stuff. But really, I mean, when all the visitors came.
Yep. Joshua, which one would you like me?
Using class visits to conduct research.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah. When I think of research, I think of a new conclusion, something that you didn't think of before. And that kind of like says everything that you guys were saying. Like it could be from a person, it can be from a textbook, it can be from the computer. It's information that you take in and then come out with a new conclusion. So, and like you said, from this class, we've learned so much that I've never even thought of, like what Will said about Matthew from Nike. I didn't realize what job that would be and how interesting that would be. And it's crazy. So.
And then if we could go to speaker history offers perspective.
Going into college, you may not know what you really want to do, but even if you have like a small idea, the people that they bring in, you get to learn from them. And what I really like is the last question that we always ask is like, what would you do if you were in our shoes like right now? Because that gives you like an idea of like, okay, if I want to be in their shoes, what can I do right now to slowly build up to that?
Yeah. So with both those watched, the point made in these last two segments is, of course, more on a personal level and speaks to the idea of granting students early access to the influential leaders in business so that they may see what's possible as a career, but also hearing from the speakers directly what steps should or can be taken in order to get to where they want to be career-wise. So with that, I'll turn it back to Brian, who will speak on the future of the program and the challenges faced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. So again, I want to remind everybody here, and I'm going to put it in the presentation once again, because I know people are moving around to different segments of our conference here. In the Zoom chat is the link to this presentation. And welcome you. We have the students' permission, so you are welcome to move around different segments of the video and hear what else they have to say. Really, really valuable input from them. I myself was not part of this focus group, and so it's really just them driving that dialogue and that conversation. So as we look to the future here, there are some challenges and I think opportunities for us to think about. First, I did take a look at the demographics of my own seminar. I think it's good to have self-evaluation. And this has been the breakdown of male and female in my seminar. This actually is weighted closer to equal, if you will, than I thought, actually. But it runs counter to the actual enrollment at the business school. Actually, females are 52% female and 48% male in the business school. And so this is cause for us to sort of think about who's being attracted to the seminar, what are the reasons, and maybe some qualitative research could be done there. Here is the breakdown of students as well by ethnicity for those who have been in the seminar, as well as where they're located. Geography, I think, is an important part since we are talking about Chicago here. So some opportunities for the future, I think, are thinking about continuous engagement beyond the first quarter. How can I, or how can we as an institution or program educators engage with students beyond the first quarter? What quantitative or qualitative measures can we use to measure retention and success? What is student satisfaction? We talk so often about them, we make assumptions, but really, are they satisfied with the experience that they're having? And other challenges that this is a first-year seminar. We do have a high proportion of transfer students. They get other types of opportunities, but it's not precisely the same. So are there ways where we can sort of merge our efforts or maybe synthesize some new types of engagements for them? And finally, is there a correlation between seminar and, say, internships and job placements later on? So we would like to spend our final time here before closing comments in our final 60 seconds. So I'll hold off on that. We'll have some closing comments, but we want to ask you for your perspectives. So I will turn off the Zoom share in just a second, but these are two questions to help us think through this. How do you promote equity through access to Chicago resources for students? This can be through classes, through seminars, through library resources, institutional resources, advising student support, and so on. And or what teaching methods can be used to reflect a mission of urban diversity and social responsibility, human dignity, and urban sustainability. I adapted these phrases from our own DePaul University Chicago Quarter mission, but I think they're shared with many of us at institutions throughout Chicago. Or we welcome your input in any way on our presentation so far, and then we will finish off here in about 4 minutes with some very quick closing comments. I think typically everybody's favorite part is always hearing directly from the student voices. So we welcome any reactions or feedback or questions on that as well.
So I guess I got a quick question. The context for this, there's a required first year seminar for everybody, and this is one choice that they can make?
Yes, John, that's correct. Yes, there are many sessions, dozens of sections offered to accommodate all of our incoming students. So for example, this year we had about 2,800 new freshmen coming in, and sections are capped at about 22 students each. And so you do the math there and then figure out how many topics are offered. So this is just one of many topics.
And it's led by a faculty member and a student mentor.
Yes, they're a 3-person teaching team. So that's me, the instructor for the course. I designed and developed this particular seminar several years ago. Joshua is my mentor for this year, so he's co-presenting. And then we also have a staff professional who helps to also guide the students and give resources and advice on navigating the university.
Great, super, thanks.
Yeah. So one of the questions in the chat here was, how can you share a bit how you encourage your students to volunteer for the focus group? How I encouraged them was I sent out an email to students of current and prior years, and I made it very simple for them. I said, I would like 15 minutes of your time to provide input about this seminar and to tell faculty and other educators at the university and at this conference what you think about your experience. I have no shortage of volunteers. I've done focus groups and unmoderated. This is part of my own research in my PhD, and I never have any shortage. In fact, I need to cut people off because when you phrase it in a way that gives students the feeling of self-agency and power that they are contributing themselves, their own voices, and that I'm also actually not in the room. I provide them the setup, of course. I provide them context, so I'm not completely invisible to the research process. But when it's phrased in a way for them to just giving 15 minutes of their time, and it's on Zoom, so they don't have to meet me anywhere. This really is, I'm just so fortunate and thankful for the technology that lets me do that. So I think the key is to make students feel that they are part of the process. Okay, in our last minute, we want to share some closing comments here, and then we'll conclude for the morning, so we can move on to other sessions. So our closing comments here, we're always thinking about, what are the takeaways from this seminar? And I think it is to contextualize the purpose of a college education, but specifically from the first day of the first week of college. And so I draw from the words of one college leader, Wim Wywell, who published a really nice piece a year ago. This is the president of Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, who stated that there are three core purposes of a college education, and they are to encourage a lifelong exploration of the self, they are to develop the skills needed to embark on meaningful careers, and they are to prepare for full and civil participation in public life. And so by engaging in and adapting, redefining and individualizing, and then collaborating around research from multiple perspectives and experiences, I think we can all enrich students' lives for a more equitable experience. And so we'll end here with one final photo share. Equity begins with access. This is our students meeting in City Hall with one of the Cook County Board of Commissioners here, Commissioner Kevin Morrison, also an alum of DePaul, was happy to share his perspective with students about how the economy connects with various parts of the city and the county, city of Chicago and of Cook County. So that was a really great experience for the students. And so we'll end there with our theme here, that equity begins with access, and really get us thinking more holistically about what that means in all of our educational endeavors. So we thank you very much for attending.
Hello, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yep.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Did you hear me about 2 minutes ago when I asked that question? My Zoom screen froze up. I was unable to use any controls. I was muted, I think, so I couldn't. So thank you for closing out gracefully.
Oh, no problem.
I didn't want to like exit and come back because I was afraid I would shut down your session. So sorry
that's okay.
leave me there,
Yeah,
but you've obviously done this before and you did fine.
Yeah. Did you want to stop the recording now?
Yeah. Oh, good point. Well, the thing is, I can't.